If you've clicked on this video, it's because you want to know how to program a week of CrossFit for your own training. Now, what's behind me on this board is 2 weeks of our Unbound Athletic CrossFit program from the last cycle. You guys have full access to the full 12-week cycle for free in the link in the description if you want to run this cycle yourself. But what you're probably looking at is very confusing, and there's a lot of elements in play. We've got everything from strength components to gymnastics work to intervals to metcons, and it's all laid out in the most confusing format possible because this is designed for coaches. This is designed to coach for an affiliate, but not necessarily for yourself. So let me run through with you how we program for a week of training for a beginner or novice athlete. Now, we're going to keep the principles, but we're going to remove this confusing jargon of a program and look at designing your own program, taking into account the previous week's training. This is the simplified version for beginners, because this is for beginners. For the majority of you guys are just learning the bases of how to create your own programming and how to build some consistency in your training. Whether you're training from home, a local gym, or even a local CrossFit box, having some consistency will be the biggest driver of results over anything else, maybe aside from sleep. Consistency will be the thing that will allow you to get better week from week. You can track your progress, you can see development, you gain momentum, and the main thing is that progression. You get to see that last week I squatted 100 pounds, this week I squat 105 pounds, I have improved. Kilos obviously are the same idea. But let's run through this program, a couple of the points that I want to make of where it changes now that we're looking at a week program basis rather than just a single workout, some of the modalities and the rules that change and how that affects you guys. If you want to check out the full first video on how to program your own CrossFit workout from a single workout perspective, check out the video up the top. That'll cover that entire first workout process. But as we're looking at a week, it becomes a bit more of a stretched out view. We're looking at it from 1,000 meters in the air, and we're trying to decipher whether we've programmed enough of the right things and not too many of the wrong. Now, because this is generalized, that's going to be one of the key points of the program. We're focusing on a broad range of movements. Variety is what keeps CrossFit not only entertaining and fun, but it also makes it interesting for the body because we're able to recover from one stimulus to the next and repeat training. Now, the format that I've utilized for this one is 4 training sessions per week, which I think for most beginners and intermediate athletes is a pretty achievable amount of volume. What that looks like is we train Monday, we have Tuesday off, we train Wednesday, we have Thursday off, we train Friday and Saturday, and then we have Sunday off. So correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's pretty achievable for most people. Let's take a look at the program itself, and then we'll run through the changes to the modality work, and then we'll look at some of these red numbers that I've applied on screen and where they become important. So session 1 on the Monday is going to be our strength session for the week. We've got 3 sets of 5 on the squat, overhead press, and deadlift on week 1, the squat, bench, and bent over row on week 2. Some slight changes there, but relatively the same format. Wednesday, we're looking at a long endurance piece of machines only called Mikko's Triangle, 39-minute EMOM. We've got 3 different stations, row ski and echo bike, with a 1-minute rest at the end, rinse and repeat for 10 rounds. We have our Friday Tabata gymnastics work, strict pull-ups, dips, and V-ups. Then we move into holds, handstand, planche, and arch hold, 20 seconds on, 10 seconds off, 8 rounds on each station. Finally, Saturday is going to finish with a short, sharp sprint workout, Gretel, 10 rounds, 3 clean and jerks, 3 bar-facing burpees. That's week 1. Week 2, when we come into Wednesday, we've got 2 rounds, 30 wall balls, 30 or 24 cal row, 30 toes bar. The Friday is going to be accumulate 3 minutes of hollow holding every time we break, 15 dumbbell Z-up, 15 dumbbell Z-ups, 15 dumbbell Z-press, and then 15 ring rows. Finally, the Saturday session is a repeat of the old open workout, 22.1, 15-minute AMRAP, 3 wall walks, 12 dumbbell snatches, 15 box jump overs. So that's the 2-week program, looking at it from a macro view. Now, the big thing is we start by looking at what we've just done to look ahead to the next week. Now, if this is your first week of programming, I would highly suggest you write it at minimum in a 2-week block, at maximum in an 8-week cycle. That way you can look at testing and adjusting, and if you're newer to it, the 2-week block might be better. So after week 1, you've received some feedback and you can make some adjustments as needed. Now, first things first is I rattled off some rep ranges for this workout based on 2 main things. 1 is obviously just adding up numbers, which is pretty straightforward. But 2 is how either I felt or how many reps I would assume that I individually got for each of these components that are on the board. So if we look at the squat, overhead press, deadlift, that's pretty straightforward. 3x5, 15 reps on each. Something like the machine work, I only count a round as 1 rep. Regardless of how many calories there are. So for example, in the Wednesday session, we've got the 2 as a score for the 30 calories both rounds, just because machine work is a lot less intense on the body, lower impact. It doesn't deserve such a big score, in my opinion. You can argue that, but that's fine. When I look over to the Tabata, obviously it's a bit more arbitrary. Same with the hollow hold one, where it's a kind of a time domain. You don't know how many reps someone gets, so I just guessed accurately. So what I would roughly think I could achieve throughout the Tabatas and through the hollow hold portion. With the hollow hold and any holding, 20 seconds counted as 1 rep. So every 20 seconds would be a repetition in general. And obviously the last ones are pretty straightforward. They've got rough numbers. I based the AMRAP off my previous score, which I roughly thought was about 8 rounds for that workout. So that's where I got those numbers from. So now that we've got the numbers, we're going to look over this side of the board at stimulus. Stimulus has changed compared to our individual workout. In the individual workout component, we considered 5 different stimuli: pull, push, squat, hinge, and midline. Very important when you're looking at an individual workout to make sure you're not programming too much of the one stimuli. In this case, we're going to make it a little bit more simple. We take away one of the movements. So we took away hinge and squat and we've combined them together into posterior and anterior. And this refers to the lower body specifically, but also glutes, erectors, and lower back are part of the posterior side, anterior being our quads mainly as far as that goes. That's just going to be a little bit easier to blanket some things together. So squatting and deadlifts will be technically the same movement pattern. And then you would look at some other things like lunging and wall balls and all that stuff. That's all going under the same tree. Let's take a look at it. So in the combination reps, don't quote my maths on this, but we've had 80 reps in the pulling movements, 130 in the push, 48 in the posterior anterior, and then 68 in the midline. Now, the one good thing about the midline is it doesn't necessarily need to be so high compared to the other movements. It just needs to have reps. If I was to give a rough recommendation, I'd say anywhere from 30 to 75 specific midline repetitions would be ideal for a week's training for a beginner. Keeping in mind like back squats, cleans, front squats, deadlifts, wall balls, all of these movements utilize the midline. So you're not going to It's not like you're going to hit any midline or lack any midline in that particular movement. It's just that it doesn't need to have as much individual focus as the other movements because it gets lots of touches as it is applied in so many of our compound lifts. That being said, we still want to have it in our program. It's just not the one that I would consider compared to some of the other movements. But pull, push, and our posterior anterior need to be relatively similar. If we see some anomalies in the list, we just need to consider that either in the current week or in the next week's training. It's not vital that we have to do exactly the same amount of reps as pull, push, and anterior and posterior, but as long as they're close, we know we're pretty much on target unless we're targeting something specific. Remember, this is generalized, so we don't need to be so specific on each of those lifts. If I was focusing more on my legs, I'd have more leg repetitions in our workouts and our overall program, and vice versa if we're focusing on something else. But in this case, we've got our total numbers, and we've noticed that the posterior anterior is relatively low. So I either make that 2 choices. 1, do I increase the amount of posterior anterior in my current program? Or B, do I look at next week and looking at adding some more in there and reducing something else? I've chosen the latter. I've chosen that next week we're going to add a little bit more repetitions in the posterior anterior compared to what it was in week 1. Now, looking at week 2, obviously there's a lot more repetitions compared to week 1 just because we have a few more workouts that have a higher rep range. We did have that cardio only workout in the Wednesday session in week 1. So the reps are a little bit different, but that doesn't matter so much. What really matters is how even are they to each other? How close they are to each other? Are they balanced? Are we favoring something? Are we not? So looking at this part, we've reduced some of the pushing reps that we did in week 1, which is good because the pushing was quite high in week 1. We've increased both pull and our posterior anterior to a level that is very similar. The midline amount stays relatively the same, 2 reps difference to week 1. So overall, I think the change was really good. And where did we get that extra leg work? Obviously, we did some squats in that first portion of the week. We've got 60 wall balls in that second workout, and the final workout has 120 box jump overs. So quite a lot of volume over the week there in the lower body. The last thing, which is this little frequency list I like to tick off. Basically, this is just a yes or no. You're going to give yourself a yes or a no, whether you've achieved that. So once you've done the reps, you know that, okay, the volume's looking good. Each movement has enough volume. We're just going to see if we can tick off each part. Modalities. Are we varying our modalities enough based on week's 1 recommendation? Remember, we want to have mostly couplets and triplets, some single modality, and very little, but every now and then having a chipper in there. So in that first one, I voted yes. Stimulus, we hit a decent amount of repetitions in each of the ones. We're covering all bases. As long as we have reps in them and they're above 30, you basically hit the stimulus. Load, each part has different loading. We've got a heavy part in the start of the week, body weight or machine work. We've got a moderate / body weight workout and then a complete body weight workout. So we're touching all bases there. 2 body weight, which is pretty good. 1 moderate workout, 1 heavy workout. We could add a light workout in, light movement in, somewhere where it's lightly loaded. So for example, like a dumbbell Z press, where the weight's not terribly heavy. You're not probably going over 20 kilos for men, not over 15 kilos for ladies, but it's enough load that it does provide some form of upper body stimulus. That's the only reason we'd get a down vote for that, but otherwise it's looking pretty good on load. Time domains, we're looking at roughly 45 minutes in that one, but each round will be counted in its own accord. So the 3x5 squats you could do in upwards of 10 minutes. So that's pretty a low time domain workout. This one's obviously a short, fast workout. This is a moderate one, and this is a long one. So some good variance on the time domains. The final one being volume, and I've actually voted it no, just because of that reason with the squat in the first one. The 48 repetitions is just too low compared to the other movements that we have in that program. It sits around this range, whereas the other movements kind of sit in the 75 to 150. We're making adjustments on the fly. Where would I look at adjusting? Obviously, each to their own. We could look at increasing overall reps in the squatting components at the start of the week. You could go 3x10 instead of 3x5. That would bump you up to over that 60 rep range. But I kind of like the progression from week to week in that, so I wouldn't touch that necessarily. We could add some more stuff in here, maybe even some air squats instead of something like a bike. But once again, I do like Mikko's triangle. It works really well for what it is, and it's some great conditioning. So I wouldn't look at it there. This is a fantastic gymnastic component. Wouldn't touch it at all. It'd be this last workout that I'd be kind of eyeing off, as we've got 2 pushing movements in the same workout. We could look at adjusting this slightly. We could even change the 3 clean and jerks to 3 squat clean and jerks as an example. We could even move the bar facing burpees to something like pistols if we have the ability level. If not, that's where you might even add a high box jump in instead of a standard box jump. Just depending on where we're looking at and what we're trying to achieve will be where we adjust it. But that last workout would be the one that I would look at changing. Like I said, we just change a variance of it that would allow us to have some more squatting in it. You might even take out the jerk entirely and then just have squat cleans and bar facing burpees, and that would work nicely. When we made the adjustment to adjust from week 1 to week 2, we obviously had a lot of valuable things. With the modalities, we're looking at yes. Our couplets and triplets are the most valuable component, and we've already had a chipper in the previous week. We're kind of lightly ticking that one off. Where I could go better is we add a shorter time domain. We might even take this workout if we wanted to be really big stickler for it and remove the 2 rounds to 1 and make it a sprint. But otherwise, it still gets a pass. It's just, one of those things where that would be something I would consider if I was looking at adjusting that program a little bit. Stimulus is a yes. We're touching all the movements. That's pretty straightforward. Load's looking good. We've got a heavy day. We've got a light day. We've got a light-ish moderate day, depending on how Z press goes. And then we've got a moderate day again for the dumbbell snatch. So that was looking good. Time domains. Yeah, that's the one we said no already. So we just don't have that shorter workout or that 5 to 12 minute workout in there. So that's where it becomes not so great. Obviously the modalities, if we had a couplet instead of a triplet, that would make it good. But yeah, in the sense of the time domain, just lacking those shorter workouts in that week's programming. And then finally, volume. Volume's actually looking better. Volume looks a lot better in this one. A lot higher squat volume, a lot higher pulling volume, but a more average standard across the board. And based on last week's training, the push went down, the others went up. It just makes things look nicely. Cool. If you did enjoy this video and you liked how this video ran, you want more things like this, we can give more. We've got one more version of this video in our tool belt, which is going to be the 12-week cycle version of it and how to program for 12 weeks. If you want your own 12-week program from our last CrossFit cycle, check it out in the link in the description. I'll have our cycle there. Also, if you want to join our community group, our Facebook group is just a request away, and that has so much value that we offer more than just these videos. Check it out. I'll leave it in the description. If you like the video, leave it a thumbs up, and I'll see you on the next video.